What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Parabellum Podcast. I'm Sean, your host and owner of Parabellum Strength and Fitness. Took about a week hiatus from making the podcast simply because I try very hard not to just fill the air with my own voice unless I have something what I feel is useful to say. Uh, And I know that's goes against all the algorithms and everything like that. All of social media will tell you post every day, tell a story, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Uh, you know, I post when I feel like I have something to say. I post when I have something that I think is relevant to either fitness or life. I don't just post for the sake of posting. And to be quite honest, uh, I only tell a story when I feel like it, just being real. And I very rarely tell the story of my family because they're mine. If you get a marketing coach or a social media coach, or you read books on how to increase your social media presence or your brand influence. It's people want to hear a story. My family is my story. They belong to me. They're my treasure. And sure, I want the world to know how much I love my wife. I want the world to know how wonderful she is. I want the world to know how much I love my boys. And I hope that they go on to do amazing things that the world knows about. I hope that my boys surpass me by leaps and bounds in every facet of life. Chiefly, uh, I hope that they have an even better relationship with the Lord than I do. But I'm reminded of Hezekiah in the Bible. And Hezekiah showed off the treasures of God's temple to a Babylonian official, and a prophet of the Lord told him, "Hey, because you did that in your son's lifetime, Babylon's going to take all of Israel captive, and they're going to take every one of these treasures." And Hezekiah's thought process was, well, I'll have peace in my lifetime, not my problem. And I'm not like that. I'm still very much in the mindset of I'm not showing my wife off because she's mine. I don't need to show anyone. I don't need to show her off to anyone. She's mine. I need to treasure her. Will I put my boys on social media? Sometimes, and it's with the purpose of demonstrating that it's okay to strength train kids. And look, they're healthy, they're not breaking, and they're pretty strong. So, but that's it. Other than that, I don't need to share every little thing that we're doing and let all of you know what kind of wonderful dad I am. I'm a great dad. I have no problem saying that. I don't need anybody to know that. So, when it comes to social media of any kind, I post when I feel like it. I post what I want, when I want, how I want. And if that means that I'm never a social media darling, okay, cool. I'm good with that. As long as business is always on an uptick, that's all I really care about. I'm doing social media just so you know I'm here. That's it. So today, now that I kind of went down that rabbit hole, uh, today I want to talk about the big three. And being a power lifter, a former power lifter competitively, doing some strongman competition, everybody kind of rolls their eyes about the big three. Here we go. Guy who says he trains athletes, but he's right into the big three. Yes, because the big three are the foundation. When I say the big three, I mean squat, bench, deadlift. Those are the big three. And they are the foundation of strength, which is the foundation of athleticism. If you don't build a solid foundation, your house will fall apart. So we use the big three, which are the traditional foundational movements. And I know there's some edgy influencer out there that's going to go, well, who said that the basics are the basics and who said they need to be the foundation? A lot of people. A lot of people who have set world records, a lot of people who have produced plenty of professional athletes, a lot of people who have influenced some of the greatest athletes of all time. And every single one of those athletes will tell you, yeah, I bench, I squat, I deadlift. Now, do they do it in the basic forms all the time? No. There's the kicker. When a young person starts out, and you're going to get my point here in a minute. When a young athlete starts out, do I think they should train very similarly to a power lifter? Yes. Yes, because we want, as coaches, we want to build the strongest body we possibly can. But here's the thing about being a good coach. You have to have the wisdom and discernment to say, that's enough. That's enough. We have built the foundation. Now it's time to start building the house. We can always go back and reinforce the foundation. But right now, we have a very solid foundation. It's time to start branching out. Training like a power lifter. I think the best methodology behind that is a conjugate style system where at the beginning of the week, you're working up to 1 rep max in a squat variation, in a bench variation. And at the back end of the week, you're using a variation of squat, bench, and a deadlift in order to work a dynamic movement, meaning you're moving lighter weight, usually with accommodating resistance, so bands or chains, at a very high rate of speed. And you've cut down on the amount of volume on those dynamic days. So I think for a youth athlete, when I say youth athlete, I mean someone who has demonstrated the ability to properly execute a squat, a bench, or a deadlift. There's no real age requirement on that. Now, am I going to take my 5-year-old or my 10-year-old and have them work up to 1 rep maxes? No. Their bones are not dense enough. They don't possess the mind to muscle connection to engage the proper muscles to do that lift at that heavy of a weight safely. They just don't. I don't know a 10-year-old who does. Definitely don't know a 5-year-old who does, because that's internal. Yes, there is some coaching to that. However, that is an internal thought process that they're just not ready for, generally speaking. My 13-year-old, he's not there either. There are a few out there, but they're few and far between. But should we be working those movements? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you're a private strength coach, such as myself, what you have to come to grips with is you're not going to change what they're doing at school. And if they're in an athletics class, they're going to have to squat, bench, or deadlift, and they're going to want them to work up to a 1 rep max. And I coach my 13-year-old, hey, you go close to a 1 rep max. but you make sure you got about 4 reps left in the tank because you just don't need to put that stress on your frame just yet. But you need to know how to do it properly. Once we've achieved that understanding of how to do it properly and we've built a solid foundation, then we can start branching out and we can start doing some variations to those movements. Having said that, we can do some of those variations concurrently. What do I mean by that? So when it comes to, I'll just do a bench press because that's the easiest. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to pull up my YouTube so you can see what I'm talking about. No, this is not shameless advertising because if you're watching this, you're already on my YouTube. But right off the bat, you can see 3 different variations, 4 of a upper body push workout. Right here, a landmine fly push-up works a ton of stabilization. You're going to get the eccentric portion of this is just killer. And it's going to build bigger pecs. It's going to build greater control throughout the chest and the upper back, as well as building tricep muscular endurance. And it's going to work coordination and proprioceptive, which is a fancy word for balance. I'm going to get to those wordings here in a minute. A multi-grip bar pin press. So I'm starting with the pins. The bar is resting on the pins when I start. When I bring it back down, rest it on the pins again, dead stop, drive it up. Now, I've got accommodating resistance on this with chains, so it's a little bit lighter. And I'm also switching grips. So my hands are in a much more neutral position, which if you're a MMA fighter, that's the position you're going to throw a punch from. If you're a football player, that's the position you're going to throw those hands in order to fight off a block. Right here, a fat bar grip. That's going to work your grip and really work the upper back when you're flat benching. And then, of course, a normal flat bench. This is not a bench variation. However, it is something that you can do to really help with your bench strength. So within that video, you see 3 different types of bars that are meant to aid in the same goal, which is increasing your upper body pressing strength. You got some accommodating resistance. You got a fat bar, which is going to work your grip, which is going to make it much more difficult on your upper back because bench press does involve upper back heavily. And then you see the regular barbell and a regular flat bench. All of those are working towards the same goal at some different angles with some different grips at different weights. You can do all of that with a youth athlete and increase their strength. And I know right now someone's having a conniption fit going, he just wants to train them like powerlifters. I will be the first to tell you that is the wrong answer. But you do have to build foundational strength. Multi-grip bar floor press, bench. Let's look here. An incline press. I think a high incline press right here. I say a high incline because I have the bench at a high incline. I think that is extremely applicable to sports, combat sports, especially contact sports, football, because of the position you're going to fire out of and throw your hands, punching, because you're aiming for someone's chin, most likely. So you're going to have if you're short like me, you're definitely throwing a punch upward. Then we go to squats, front squat. I think every athlete should do much more front squatting than they do back squatting because I can't think of anything other than rucking that we do athletically where a weight is going to be loaded on our spine. If you play football, you're firing up the anterior part of your body, which is the front, is going to be the contact. Your quads are going to be heavily involved. So because of the load position of the load, this works your quads more than a back squat, but you're still getting a ton of glute and hamstring work. Zercher reverse lunges. I think a Zercher hold where you're holding the barbell in the crook of your arm, I think that is super applicable to sports. It's also because of the placement of the barbell, you're going to get some bicep work in. You're going to get a ton of upper back work in. And I'm still getting quad, glute, and hamstring work there. So we're just looking at the different variations of squat and bench that can be done, and they're still in keeping with athletic movements. A dynamic Zercher squat, accommodating resistance. You just got the band, so you got constant tension, and you're moving this weight as fast as you possibly can each rep. There's a ton of variations that people just don't think about. A supported RDL. I misspelled that. Wow. I got to fix that. Huh. Stuff happens. Uh, that's a variation of a deadlift. And because I have that support right there where I'm holding on to the power rack, me personally, this is me speaking from personal experience, having back issues from the military and hip issues. I don't experience those back and hip, that back and hip pain after I lift when I do a supported RDL. There are plenty of other ways to work balance other than an RDL. I understand RDL is a single leg RDL is a great way to work balance. Outstanding. But if you have a youth athlete or even an older athlete or, someone like me who I look through all the stuff, hip impingements, a curvature of the spine, degenerative disc disease, those things, uh, which again, praise God that I can do some of these things still. But you got to look at risk versus reward. If I've got a kid that I want to go play football, do I really need them to do 300-pound barbell single leg deadlifts? Or do I need to make sure that their hamstrings are getting a good stretch and their hamstrings are strong enough to support the force and produce the force for them to run fast? I think one of the best things we can do that is very joint friendly, and whether you like it or not, is somewhat of a squat variation, is a sled march, because you're going to push this sled and you're lifting a leg up and driving it into the ground somewhat like a lunge. But if you look, it's a quarter squat. It's a unilateral quarter squat. It's just the loading's different. All kinds of different ways to load the weight, load the body. You have goblet Cossack squats, which is going to work the adductors, adduct, bring them back to the center line of the body. That's the inside muscles of the thigh and hamstring that don't really get worked. I see athletes, youth athletes around here all the time. They're squatting massive amounts of weight on a straight bar. That's great. I love seeing a 16-year-old kid that can squat 500 pounds. I think that's amazing. I think that is awesome. Problem. They're tearing up their shoulders. And they're not tearing up their shoulders because squatting is dangerous. They're tearing up their shoulders because they aren't getting taught properly. And then they end up old and they don't want to squat. I've had shoulder surgery. I've got shoulder issues. So what do? I load up a safety bar. Donate to your local schools. Donate a safety bar to them. Help them out a little bit. I understand that's a cost, but you know what? If it's a donation, you can write it off on your taxes at the very least. So I wanted to come on here today and just expound upon the fact that there are variations to the big three that athletes should be doing in order to get stronger. Because if you want to get stronger, or let me rephrase, if you want to get faster, you've got to get stronger. But you've got to get stronger in an intelligent way. You need to do strength training that applies to your sport. If you look at my TikTok or my Facebook, even where I'm training youth athletes, you don't see barbells on their back. If you come to the gym, you won't see a barbell on their back. You won't even see a barbell in their hand yet. But you will see a lot of goblet squats. You will see a lot of weighted step ups, weighted lunges, because we're building that strength. So we're squatting. We're doing dumbbell floor press, dumbbell bench, dumbbell overhead press, because those are regression. But we're progressing towards their ability to lift a barbell. So I've used some terminology here, and I'm going to address that because, well, it's my podcast. If I want to rant and rave, I can. Tons of people on social media wanting to use $10 words, and the majority of people have to go Google, what the heck does that mean? And I'll read through their comments, and the only people who understand what that means are other coaches. And for me, I look at that and I think of it as pretentious. I attempted to do that when I had first started out in this, because I got some advice. Hey, sound like a doctor. And I both agree and disagree with that. It comes down to understanding your audience. I'm not going to talk proprioceptive training with a 13-year-old. I'm going to tell them we're going to do some balance work. Most of my clients, I'm going to tell them, hey, we're working on balance here. Stop trying to sound so intelligent. People already, if they're paying you as a coach, they already think you're intelligent. Stop being so pretentious. Now, with me, hey, you're going to get the real deal all the time. If I don't know what something means, I'll tell you straight up. I have no idea. I think the best coaches will admit they don't know everything. That their way may not be the best way, but they're willing to go find a better way. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode today, in order to display the fact that the big three, there's a lot of variations to them that are still going to meet the intent of increasing that barbell bench press. Those videos of me doing a straight bar bench, those are over a year old. because I don't do that anymore. My shoulders can't handle it. I work exclusively with that multi grip because it doesn't bother my shoulders. And maybe I'm late to the party, but I'll watch Coach Tony Holler a lot, and Mike Boyle, and those are two of the smartest strength and conditioning coaches out there, because what they do is they make sure that everything they do applies directly to the sport that the athlete is playing. And for a youth athlete, for me, I'm coaching kids that play 2 and 3 sports. So I'm doing my best to make sure that what they're doing applies to their sport, but it also builds foundation. All those kids are going to need to barbell bench at some point in time because they're going to be required to do it in school. Does that barbell bench necessarily translate to the field? No. A barbell bench, I'll even argue this, a traditional powerlifting barbell bench is not the most translatable upper body pressing movement to football, because no one's ever taught to throw a block with their hands out that wide. Now, if you want to do a close grip barbell bench press, okay, because your hands are meant to be in narrow when you throw a block or you throw a what's called a forearm shiver. Baseball. Why do I need a baseball player who can bench 500 pounds? I don't. Bottom line, I don't. But you see, they need the numbers. We quantify the strength of youth athletes through their big 3 numbers. And I understand that. I get it. I really do. However, let's look at what they need versus what we want to see. I would rather have a baseball player on a football bar bench, and I'm going to look at them and go, I don't care how much you can bench. I need you at a certain amount of strength, but your bench is not going to directly correlate to your sport. Your squat, okay, that's going to help. Your power clean, okay, that's going to help. Your landmine clean and press, because you have to coil for that and you have to explode out of that coil and then press overhead. That's a little bit more translatable to baseball. I care about the speed that you can sling a medicine ball 10% of your body weight into a wall. That'll help. When we talk a running back, yeah, your bench is translatable if it's close grip. Your squat, translatable to the field. Your power clean, translatable to the field. I don't know if translatable is a word, but I'm rolling with it. Everybody else is making up words. Why can't I? So when you're training, you as an adult or you as a youth athlete or a parent that's looking to have their child trained, what directly correlates to the sport? Everybody wants their kid getting faster. Everybody. I want my kid faster. Okay. Why are you having my kid do all that squatting? Why aren't they sprinting? Well, because I need to increase their force production. That means I've got to get them stronger. They've got to be able to strike the ground harder. In order to strike the ground harder, they've got to be stronger. Well, isn't that dangerous? Not the way we're doing it. Are you going to ask the middle school, high school weight room coach these questions? No. Why not? You should be. My oldest son is in junior high, and the gentleman that coaches that weight room, he does it a lot like I do it. Little subtle differences. But I was talking to him one day because my son comes home. He goes, "But he coaches like you do. Well, he doesn't put a barbell on our back. We're squatting with medicine balls and kettlebells." And I was talking to him one day. He goes, "Yeah, no, no, they've got to demonstrate. They've got to graduate to a barbell. They just don't need it at this age." So I agree 100%. They just don't need it at this age. They'll figure that out as they get older and once they have demonstrated the ability to do a proper squat. Power cleans. You're going to get just as much out of a kettlebell clean or a landmine clean as you would a barbell clean at the age of 13. Now, once you're 16, yeah, 16, 17, you need that barbell. So you see, it's knowing when to do these things and it's knowing the purpose behind them. And a lot of folks, they just look at the number and the number tells the entire story. The number does not tell the entire story. It only tells a very small part of it. And I won't ever back down off of that. And that's coming from a former power lifter. That entire hobby, sport, whatever you want to call it, it thrives off the numbers. I care more about what does that form look like? Does that really apply to what your goals are? I mean, I've got clients. I've got one client in particular. She is a United States Army armored officer. I trained her conjugate for a long time because she needed that foundation of strength. She was a CrossFitter. She was not strong. Not strong at all. She's strong now. I don't train her conjugate anymore. We 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 evolved the training program to directly correlate to the demands of her job and to keep her not only at the cutting edge of her job, but to make sure that when she retires or decides to leave the military, that she's not so broken that she can't enjoy life. No matter what, you leave the military, you're going to be somewhat broken. If you spend more than 4 years in the military, you're coming out somewhat broken because of the demands of combat arms. If you're in combat arms, if you're not in combat arms, if you're broken, it's probably because you didn't do a whole lot in the first place. That's the catch 22 of life. You can either be broken and accomplish a great deal with your body, and that leads to a great deal of mental resiliency, or you can be broken because you didn't do anything, and then all of a sudden one day you decide that you can do something, and your body goes, "No, you can't." I'm I've got some issues with my physical body. Uh, Today I had planned on doing squats. Nope. Lower back flared up, hurting like nobody's business. And I had to put my ego aside and go, no, I'm not doing it. Totally changed the plan. but I changed the plan to something that directly correlates to my goals. My goal is no longer to lift the heaviest weight I can. My goal is to remain strong and try to improve or maintain the mobility that I have and not look at my kids more than one day a week and go, no, dad can't go play football today. Dad's hurting. That's my goals. If I've got a 17-year-old quarterback, he looks at me the other night, coach, how can I improve my bench? Because it's one of the weaker ones. I went, you're a quarterback. Who cares? And he just kind of went, he looks at me like, are you putting me down because I'm a quarterback? Or I went, no, who cares what you can bench press as a quarterback? I care about how far you can throw the ball, how accurate you can be with the ball. I care about your decision making. I don't care about your bench press. And we've seen that all the quarterbacks that have a stupid high bench press, the last one I can think of, and this is going to really date me, is Dan Kendra out of Florida State. Florida State, Dan Kendra was an absolute weight room monster. Could throw the ball a mile. Finished his collegiate career at fullback because he was so addicted to the weight room that the weights got in the way of him throwing the ball. But then you've got guys like Jalen Hurts, who I believe is a over 500-pound squatter, but nobody knows what he benches because who cares? He can drive the ball. He can drive the ball through the eye of a needle, or he can take off running, hurdle someone, or the dreaded tush push. And he drives his feet so hard into an offensive lineman's back that he's going to get that foot they need for a first down or a touchdown. Again, does what you're doing correlate with your goal or with your need? And if it doesn't, don't do it. But that's a 17-year-old kid. He's about to enter his senior season. That 13-year-old kid, I'm working them towards that barbell because I don't know what they're going to play. They may be a quarterback today. Next week, they may be a tight end. Tight end, you need to bench some weight. So it all goes, it ebbs and flows, and it's up to a good coach to communicate with athletes and to prepare them for the inevitable. Prepare them for what could change, what might change, and train them, but also train them in the moment. That's why military guys make good coaches. We can make decisions on the fly, plan for the worst case scenario, plan for the best case scenario, and then when neither one of them happen, hey, all right, here's what we're going to do. So anyway, that's the episode for today. Please go to my Facebook, check out what I'm doing with youth athletes at Revive, something that I'm super proud of, every single one of them. We do, I follow Mike Boyle and Coach Tony Holler's blueprint because I don't mind copying the best in the business. I have the kids sprint maximal speed once a week, one time a week for 4 reps. We do flying 10s. I have every single one of them at under a 1.5. And I mean, these are some kids. I've got some big boys. which if you translate that into a 40-yard dash, you're looking at roughly 5-second splits. So really proud of that most of my kids are running 5 seconds or just under. So what I'm doing is working. Anyway, appreciate your time. Thank you. Remember, Jesus is Lord. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I praise the Lord that I still have the ability to do the things that I want to do. I praise the Lord for the opportunity to coach these youth athletes, coach my sons, coach folks via online. I praise the Lord for that. That's all His doing. And I love seeing the fact that we've got athletes coming out of the woodworks, and they're not just saying, "I thank God." No, they're saying the name of Jesus. They're getting specific about it, and it's awesome. And I pray that the Lord raises those up who are bold to say, "Praise you, Jesus." Anyway, remember, be strong. Do not let your hands be weak, for the Lord shall reward the work of your hands. 2 Chronicles 15:7. I'll talk to you guys next week.